We migrated a 10-year-old media company from WordPress to beehiiv in 6 days. And we live to tell the tale. Buckle up, this is a dandy. I'm Amber Christian. I'm the editor of Handmade Seller Magazine. And I'm also producing this occasional series on what it's actually like to be a beehiiv operator. I use beehiiv as my, well, frankly, as my ride or die. We run the publication infrastructure on beehiiv. And I thought it would be helpful to get an inside look and perspective from someone that actually uses the tool in a day-to-day life, not is giving a review of it. So this is not the kind of thing that is going to be screenshots or telling you how to set it up. These are not walkthroughs. You can find that information other places. This is more like, what is it actually like to work with this tool on a day in and day out basis? February 2025 is when we actually migrated to beehiiv, and so in tech terms, wow, I'm really pretty much kicking it old school. We've been on the platform for quite a while. For some context, there are basically 3 primary characters in this story. There's myself, my husband, that I also call Mr. HMS, and beehiiv. Substack is going to play a cameo role, along with a couple of other providers as well. But first, some context on what are we actually migrating. So Handmade Seller Magazine is the platform that we were migrating, and it is a 10-year-old media company that produces a digital and print publication. So that means we have some of our own unique challenges as part of that, because we're coming from a legacy infrastructure. This is not a cold start kind of situation where you're starting a new platform. This is, oh, hey, by the way, I have to deal with paying customers when I go to migrate this. So our primary paid subscribers typically come from the United States, Canada, and the UK. A lot of that has to do with currency and exchange rates in terms of who can actually afford our publication. There are free people from around the world that read our publication as well. So let's rewind and help set the stage for you. It's February 2025. I awoke to an email from my subscriber, one of my subscribers. I'm just getting a white screen. What? What do you mean you're getting a white screen? She said, I'm just getting a white screen when I try to display the magazine. So I log in, and what do I discover? The bleepin' free plugin broke. Oh, great, lovely. If you've ever operated on a WordPress infrastructure, plugins break. I mean, it's kind of the nature of that infrastructure, right? When that happened and that plugin broke that day, something inside of me also broke. When I bought this publication several years ago, I inherited a very fragmented infrastructure. I duct taped on Thrivecart to manage subscriptions. I was on WordPress. So I ended up with, in terms of an infrastructure, I had WordPress, Thrivecart, I had Bravo to manage my newsletter, I was using Stripe for payments, some PDF display plugins. By the time you added all of it up, I had, between plugins and different products, just to run my little indie publication, I had 25 of them. It was completely horrifying. You might be laughing because you're thinking, hey, you did it with 25. That's pretty good in the WordPress world. WordPress it wasn't working for me. And I know that it is the predominant thing that runs a lot of websites, and a lot of people swear up and down that it's the best thing since sliced bread. But for me, that plugin breaking was just one more bridge too many. I felt like I was constantly dealing with integration issues or things that didn't work. Things were breaking, and it's really hard to have that happen when you have paying customers and they can't even use your product because the CRUD is not working very well. It was very frustrating. And it was also kind of a critical moment for, was I going to continue to deal with this old legacy infrastructure, or was I going to look at something else? I was also burning out from this journey. If you're a content creator, you know, people make it sound glorious, like it's easy, but you actually have to get the content created. You have to get it staged. You have to get it on the right environments. There's all the marketing and things that have to be done with it. And if you don't have infrastructure that integrates, it can feel like an uphill battle just to get a piece of content out. And that's what I was really starting to feel. In addition to the magazine that we produce quarterly, I also was producing a certain amount of content each month. I just felt like I was in the fight of my life to get it to stage well and all that. And you can look at it and say, oh, maybe you should have done a better job with WordPress or whatever. But the reality is some of these tools, frankly, they're a little bit archaic. That might be controversial, but for me, they were, and it just wasn't working. And it was just burning me out, and I'd lost all the joy in creating anything at that point in time. They were also just bolted together, like the reporting, all these other things, it was just really challenging. So if we're kind of to reflect back, like what was happening at that time, I actually wrote an entire series called Inside My Hive. It's on Handmade Seller's website if you want to read it for all the gory details. I'm going to refer back a little bit to that as I talk through some of these pieces about what was really going on at that point in time. Okay, so in terms of the biggest core challenges I was facing as a content provider producing on this WordPress infrastructure, there's 8 of them that I identified at the time that were happening. The first one is it was having a poor advertising partner. There were also challenges with managing what you can't measure. I couldn't pursue certain new opportunities. Let's talk about the WordPress ecosystem. I had a Thrivecart renewal mess, something you don't find people talking about. Not everyone loves AI. Turtles were outrunning my website speed, and then one day it just broke. So I'm going to go into all of these and kind of share some stories. In hindsight, they're kind of funny because I'm past them and I'm not dealing with them anymore. So the first one, a poor advertising partner. I like to kind of joke this is my, well, that was kind of crappy story. So I was using AdSense plugged into WordPress. Very common. Lots of people do this as a way to monetize blogs or other types of content. One day on the website, I inadvertently clicked something and I turned on AdSense advertising right in the middle of my homepage. And I hit the publish button, and then I would go to check my website to see how it showed up. And right in the middle of the website, and I wish I'd taken a picture of this, but I didn't. Right in the middle of the website was a giant advertisement for a toilet. Really, AdSense? Really? Because, you know, people looking for handmade items are really looking for toilets, right? AdSense just wasn't a great advertising partner. When I looked at the kinds of things that were showing up on my site, it was siding, it was toilets, it was all this random stuff. Nothing ever even remotely applied to my industry. It was obnoxious, frankly. And the payout wasn't even particularly good on it. And so for me, the AdSense as an advertising partner wasn't really all that great. So the second one, you can't manage what you can't measure. Literally, you know how people always talk about, oh, manage your funnel. And they want you to advance people through stages of a funnel. And that's what we're all supposed to gloriously do. I'm like, on WordPress, what funnel? I have a fragmented, broken, messed up infrastructure. There's no funnel. I have a bunch of random, disparate, cobbled together tech. And a lot of people then say, oh, well, then you need to bolt on more analytics. It's like adding more tech doesn't always solve the problem. So for me, it was incredibly hard to figure out who's coming to the site, who converts to free, who upgrades to paid. Because of this mishmash system that I have, it was so hard for me to get any visibility into what was really going on here. The other reality is it created an inability to pursue new opportunities. I was interested in trying different, I thought about looking at community things. I thought about looking at more podcasting or embedding some of that kind of stuff. Every time I turned around, trying to add something else to that fragmented, fragile infrastructure was daunting. And it made everything so much harder that I couldn't actually pursue a lot of different opportunities that I wanted to. If you wanted to do an affiliate program for something, oh, that was some other complete setup. Like I had Thrivecart to do affiliates. I'm like, I can't roll that out. I can't ask people to use this fragmented, broken setup. So it was really challenging for me. The WordPress ecosystem, I was becoming increasingly uncomfortable on the WordPress ecosystem. This is not a dunk on that ecosystem. For some people, it's great. Knock yourself out if you love that. But for me, it wasn't great. I was also becoming increasingly concerned about something that I saw happen in the industry. In tech circles, this was talked about very widely. I didn't see this penetrating the public consciousness in the same way. 4 months before, so in late 2024 at this point, there was a huge blow up between the creator of WordPress and the largest hosting provider in the industry. The creator of WordPress basically went nuclear on the largest hosting provider. Lawsuits ensued. I don't even know where it's at anymore. It was a pop popcorn and watch if you're not in the ecosystem. But as someone who was, it was ugly. It was very ugly. I read what this person was writing and saying, and I read how he was going after the other hosting providers. And I read some pretty interesting things, and I started to ask myself a question. A quiet little voice in my mind said, okay, you're struggling with this infrastructure to begin with. And this is what you see going on in the industry. Is this really where you want to be? Is this really what you want your tech to be running on? When you are seeing the actual creator go after that large hosting company. Whether it's right or wrong, that's not for me to weigh in on. But as a customer that used that product, I had every right to be concerned. If you really want to know more about what that whole saga was, just Google the WordPress meltdown of 2024. You'll probably find it, and you'll find all sorts of interesting things. And maybe he won, maybe he didn't. I don't care. But I just knew as a customer, I didn't want my whole infrastructure dependent on an ecosystem where that was going on. That wasn't the right choice for me. Thrivecart renewal mess. That's the next problem that happened. So I had gotten Thrivecart set up for running subscriptions. One morning I awoke to an angry, very nasty email from someone. That's how I found out Thrivecart wasn't sending the renewal emails it was supposed to. It was very hostile. Someone was incredibly angry that I had renewed their subscription. And it was a shocking way to wake up. And so I had followed up and said, wait a second, my system was supposed to have sent it to you. Oh, it never sent the renewal emails. So there was no heads up going to my customers on Thrivecart. I did a lot more digging. I found other people on Reddit forums and other places talking about this exact same issue. Very few people talk about it, but there were no renewal emails going out to my subscribers. I was getting angry emails from people that didn't want to renew in some cases. Other people didn't care, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. Let's just say my ticket is still open with Thrivecart to this day when I'm filming this. Almost a year and a half later. They never fixed it. Nobody ever magically knew what was going on, and nobody really cared to fix it. So I guess engineering is going to do something about it. Well, I was just like those other people in the forums that engineering never did anything about it, and it wasn't working. Does it work today? I have no idea. I don't care. But at that time, it was a pretty serious issue for me. Not everyone loves AI. Here's another problem that came up. I started looking in Google Analytics one day at my referral traffic and, ChatGPT is starting to refer me traffic. What? I had my robots updated that said, don't scan me. But no, ChatGPT was scanning anyway. But forget what it actually says in some of those files. I found out they basically came and had scraped my whole site and started sending me referral traffic. Now, some people love AI tools, and I use them for certain things myself, not for writing, but I use them for other things. And I was extremely uncomfortable with this because basically they were stealing everything that was being written. I wasn't being compensated for it. And it brings us to an uncomfortable place, right? We all want these tools to work, but they need all of the training information. And so people like me had everything scraped and taken without our permission, without our compensation, without anything. And someone would say, oh, well, that's just the way it works. How would you feel if years worth of your work was just taken? I was very uncomfortable with this. The way we had our WordPress system set up, we had limited ability to prevent this. And again, some of you might say, oh, you just didn't do it right. Fine, whatever. The reality was they came, they took it. I was not happy. So I needed to move to a provider where I could add some stronger protections and where we could actually set up Cloudflare. Ultimately, what happened was beehiiv actually also uses some Cloudflare as well. And so we were able to configure Cloudflare on our side. It connects up with beehiiv. It actually works beautifully. And we were able to stop a lot of bot scraping for us, because really we should be in control of that decision, not someone else coming and taking it and telling me I should be okay with it, and at the same time producing more original content for it to consume while people then don't get a subscription. You know, that model, that's just a whole nother thing. Anybody that's in the publishing or media world knows what I'm talking about. It's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people, but it is a reality. And I had everything taken, and so I knew I was going to have to put different protections in place in the future if I wanted to prevent that. Turtles outran my website speed. I had so many performance issues with WordPress. It was constantly trying to tune things. I don't even want to tell you the hours I spent trying to optimize WordPress for speed. Yes, I added plugins. I tried everything. It just didn't work very well. So I had this slow performing site, and we all know that affects your rankings, your ratings. It affects a lot of things. It affects people's satisfaction with, do they even want to use your product? And if you can barely get the website to load because it's so slow, and you know, some of that comes from the WordPress hosting infrastructure and what I was or wasn't paying. And I didn't want to have to pay for some huge high-end dedicated server for a small traffic site. That didn't make any sense. So I needed to be somewhere where the product was actually more built for performance as opposed to performance being an afterthought. And then finally, one day it just broke. This plugin broke. I got what I call the white screen of death. Couldn't open the magazine anymore, and something inside of me broke too. I spend so much time trying to help small artisan businesses and trying to write about creative and interesting things to do and talk about practical wisdom, and I needed to take a dose of my own medicine and do something very practical, but also maybe a little insane at the same time, and throw out the old infrastructure. Make the change that would allow my publication to be more stable, would allow me to be able to be the primary operator of that publication, and do that in such a way that just made sense. So it was time. Now, before I get into the actual conversion to beehiiv, let me talk a little bit about what actually governed my decision to go with beehiiv at that time. Again, remembering that this is back in February of 2025. So for me, I first asked myself, I knew I had to get up on a new infrastructure and fast because this just was not working. Okay, so what was I going to do? What did I need? So as a publication, I have a print and digital publication. I needed a website, subscription management, some sort of easy newsletter management, a great mobile experience, the ability to gate content. I didn't have that really with WordPress. It wasn't very clean and easy. So there's just really some pretty basic fundamental things. I didn't need the fanciest website. I needed something that would display information, publication information, our stories. I needed basic integration like with Stripe and some of these other kinds of products. And so I started looking around and I started looking at what some of the different products were. I looked at Beehiiv, I looked at Substack, I looked at Kit a little bit, but that one really was, I felt, geared more toward creator, not independent media publication. So really, when it came down to it, there was really two. It was really down to Beehiiv and Substack. And I had seen examples on Substack of other small publications and how they actually managed things. And Beehiiv was a little newer, but I was intrigued. I did a lot of research. I watched a few videos, but mostly I actually was intrigued because I read a lot of their help documentation. I have a tech background. I just read their documentation. It told me a lot about what they could do or what they couldn't do. And I looked it over and I got to what I would call sort of the 80-20 rule. I felt like 80% of what I needed it could probably do. So I had Mr. HMS, Matt, my husband Matt, who does some of the tech work on the platform as well. I said, hey, would you take a look at this? I was in the middle of writing some articles. I had a lot of other stuff going on. And he was literally sitting next to me on the couch at this time. And I was writing and I was writing. I happened to flip back to my email and I saw a receipt. I was like, I just wanted you to look at Beehiiv, sign up for a trial. And he started giggling. Like, you bought it? He said, yeah, it looks great. Let's do it. I'm running an import right now on your old content. 10 minutes later, he says to me, the import's done. I had 10 years of content on that old site. What do you mean it's done? I'm like, what? All the old posts from our WordPress site? Sure enough, they have an importer that actually allows you to bring a lot of posts in from legacy sites. Now, there were a couple different platforms available at that time. You'd have to go look and see how many platforms are available now. But their importer tool was actually quite good. I would say it did probably 80 to 85% of the work in bringing those old articles in for us. So that was, I think, a key thing that I learned is a lot of the heavy lifting can be done from Beehiiv. What I also then discovered, though, is I had done a really poor job on some of my SEO descriptions from WordPress. And so when those came in, I had to do a lot of work in cleaning those up. So what I ultimately did is I actually went article by article. I just started working my way through the backlog of articles. I had to clean some things up. So things that came in on widgets I had to remove because some of those got turned into images. And I had to actually make sure the flow all looked okay. I had to fix some internal hyperlinks to other articles because at that time they couldn't do some of that internal linking. I do not know if the tool can do it now, but at that time they couldn't. So I had a lot of cleanup to do, but a lot of it wasn't really Beehiiv's fault. It was my own poor management on the previous platform because it was so hard to manage. So if you are bringing things in from Beehiiv, lesson learned, make sure you have the time. I was operating on a burning platform. That's why we did this in 6 days. In hindsight, it would have been nice to have a few weeks to slowly work my way through everything and get it all structured all beautifully. That would have been lovely, but just didn't happen that way for us. I also had to go through and decide, okay, once I moved to Beehiiv, it was so much easier to manage the paywall infrastructure. It was as simple as go into an article, add where I wanted the paywall to fit. It was very easy, but I had to actually go through the articles and add it in the places that I wanted it. Or I could actually make them completely subscriber only type articles, but there's a little bit of sort of configuration on your content that you have to do. And I had to go through and make intelligent decisions around where did I want things to be gated or where I didn't necessarily want things to be gated. So that took us about the first 2 days to really, and I mean, we're talking long days. There was a lot of sushi and pizza those 2 days. It was insanity. But we spent those 2 days actually getting the initial all set up there. The next few days, we were finishing really the beehiiv configuration. So because while beehiiv actually did all of the importing for me, what it couldn't do is create all of the website for me. At that time, again, you have to explore the tools, so there's been a lot of newer things that have come out. I used some very basic templates that they had available because I'm a publication, that's all I really needed. I didn't need some glamorous, sexy thing. I just needed something functional. In fact, frankly, it was nicer than what I had on the old WordPress site. So I was able to get that set up. So I had to bring over things like about pages, privacy policies, all that kind of stuff. So we spent the next couple of days going through and getting all of that infrastructure all set up, going through and getting all of our subscriptions created, the subscription tiers created and set up, and did all of the rest of that site build out. I also had to build out things like welcome sequences and automations, all of that kind of stuff. That's just a natural part of any build cycle, so you have to have some time to build that in. Now, the ones I had before were pretty bad, so even a basic welcome sequence was great for me, and that worked. I wasn't getting into anything too incredibly sophisticated. I didn't have a ton of segmentation. I had you're either free or paid. That was really all I had at that point or time. So if you do have more sophisticated segments, you might have to look at how you actually import and bring that information into beehiiv. So 2 days to set that up, get it connected to Stripe. There was a little bit of work to do to get a Stripe Connect account set up and to really, you got to lean in a little bit to how does beehiiv build their integrations with Stripe. And I think you really should kind of think of them as being kind of built together. We've really learned that they really lean into what is inherently native in Stripe and build on that, as opposed to just shove things over to Stripe. It's a little bit of a different design philosophy, and it took me a while to get used to that, but it's something that has made a lot of sense over time. And one of the beautiful things about migrating the subscriptions is you actually use Stripe's migration processes. So we were doing a little bit of a divide and conquer, and so Mr. HMS was actually doing the conversion. So he actually managed the whole Stripe conversions. Now for us, we had a little bit of a more challenging situation because at that time we had quarterly, semi-annual, and annual subscriptions. We didn't really even, I don't think we even had monthly no, we did have some monthly subscriptions at that point. So we had 4 different levels of subscriptions that we had to migrate over. And on beehiiv, they had monthly and annual at that time. They've later added quarterly. I'm not sure about semi-annual, but we knew we had to give up a little bit in terms of functionality. Now, I was using the 80-20 rule. I had to get off that old infrastructure. I had a couple of subscribers on a semi-annual plan. I knew that that was manageable. So I just segmented them out and planned for some communication to them when we converted over their subscription as to kind of what would happen. Because it converts them over, and they basically it created what it called a trial subscription, and then the renewal would actually kick in. It's actually quite interesting in terms of an integration process. It worked quite well as we were working through all of this. Another thing that we did as part of getting all of this configuration and everything set up is, so we got the migrations run, we kind of figured out, got our subscriptions set up, got our content there, got our websites there, got our sequences there. We were in pretty good shape. We were getting ready to do kind of what I call the official cutover and all of that. And when I say the migrations that we were running, we were actually doing some tests with that. I would say we weren't running the full migrations. And then I decided to do something that's perhaps a little unorthodox. I don't know, maybe other people do this. I opened a support ticket with beehiiv, and I explained the situation about what was going on. I also had questions for them about some of these subscriptions levels. And so when I opened that ticket, I basically told them, look, we're migrating, like we're coming on over, and we've had this situation, we've had an infrastructure failure. I'm migrating over to beehiiv. And just a heads up that you might see a flurry of tickets if I run into things. You know, whenever you go to cut over systems, stuff happens. And because beehiiv's an early stage startup, they didn't really have dedicated migration teams or anything like that. This is not a large enterprise company. They're managing the support queue as tickets come in. What was super kind, and I give huge props to beehiiv even to this day, is a person on their support team took it upon themselves to be the point person and watch for any tickets that came in from me so I could have one point of contact. They were not obligated to do this. And it's one of many reasons that they have basically become my ride or die. The support to help me through that process was really wonderful because I also told them what was going on. I didn't just say, hey, I have this issue. I said, hey, here's what's happening. You might see a bunch of things coming in the coming days. Just a heads up. And so they said, hey, great, we'll watch for it. We'll answer any questions. We'll guide you through that process. I can't guarantee they'll do it for you, but I will tell you that was a really wonderful way to manage it as a small company. So they had all the context as to what was going on, and then they were managing and helping me with that process. All right, so now, day 5, migration and cutover day. Okay, day 5 dawns, and I was really nervous. I mean, we had just spent, like I said, 4 sushi and pizza fueled days running this conversion, a broken infrastructure, hoping not too many people scream in the meantime. I was dealing with the people that were like, hey, this isn't working. I was just dealing with that on the side while getting this cutover done. So I drafted up a communication to my paying subscribers to explain what was happening, what was coming next. I went for the truth in what had happened, in that we'd had an infrastructure failure and that we were migrating over to the beehiiv platform. Again, this is February 2025. Don't panic, anybody watching this. Our infrastructure's fine. We've been on beehiiv for a long time now. And I did the best I could to minimize any disruptions and that I would be in contact with them during this migration. It was a simple email. I was honest. And you know, people were surprisingly kind. Nobody screamed. Nobody got angry with me. They're like, oh, something's going on. I suspect some of them were like, wow, sucks to be her. In a conversation, right? No one likes watching someone go through something like that. That's not fun. So they all had a heads up. They knew. So day 5, we ran our Stripe migration. That created all the new subscriptions on the new platform for us. And while we had done the preliminary steps that we could do, a little bit of testing with it, there's only so much you can really do until you run those beasts. And so if you ever find yourself slightly terrified about running migrations, of course, they're kind of scary, no matter who you are. In the grand scheme of things, though, I think that was actually one of the scarier things from me. But it turned out it was not that big of a deal. And it frankly was a nothing burger in the end. And when I say that, I know you're like, oh, yeah, you can make this stuff up in your mind, but you follow the Stripe rules. beehiiv can help you if you need kind of guidance about what to do before or after if you run into things. I also found that it was incredibly helpful that, sometimes you're like, well, do you do this on the payment side or do you do this on the beehiiv side? just ask them as you're going through that process, and they can give you the guidance about what happens where. And they knew enough about what was happening with Stripe. This was the other thing about support, that I've dealt with product integrations before. Remember, I used to implement TAC at large companies. And so often when anything even slightly crosses a threshold to a new product, they punt it to someone else. And you're just left sitting there going, something's not working and I don't know what to do. Was really what I really appreciated about the beehiiv team is they were able to say, that happens on Stripe. This is generally where you're looking. They weren't taking accountability or ownership for it working perfectly on Stripe, but they knew enough to be dangerous and they knew how to point you in the right direction. And that was actually something that also helped make this incredibly successful in terms of the conversion and go live, because they were willing to give me some of that guidance. So in the end, day 6 was what I would call go live day, right? We've done the migration, we've notified our subscribers. And in terms of, okay, well, you set up all of these new paying subscribers, how did you get all their accounts set up, right? Everybody needs usernames and passwords and all that kind of stuff, right? All we did when we migrated them is when I sent the communication email, I told them to simply do a password reset when they went to their beehiiv account. Then they could do a reset, they could get it set up, and they'd be on their way. You don't need to migrate any usernames, passwords, anything like that. You just simply include that in your communication as part of the go live process. Okay, so we're day 6, right? It's go live day. I kind of feel like I'm gonna throw up because I was so nervous doing this. Oh my gosh. In hindsight, I was very tired and very wired at that point. I couldn't believe we were actually doing it. And in the afternoon that day, I kind of made that call, and Mr. HMS did some of the cutover with firewalls, DNS setup, all that jazz kind of stuff that we had to do to hook up all of the pieces. We hooked up our Cloudflare. Cloudflare is a whole nother conversation as part of this, but is also an important piece of our tech stack as well. We hook everything up. We also hook up and do a lot of the redirects as well. Now, at the time, there wasn't some of the tools that there are around some of the redirects, and so we had to manage that in other ways. I think we did some things through Cloudflare, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. We're past that now. But now inside of the beehiiv tool, there's a lot more stuff around redirects for that part. So you can explore that inside the tool if you need to do a lot of those redirects. I sent out instructions with everybody for getting into the new site, had them do that simple password reset like I was talking about. And I did my best to explain to people, what are you actually going to see on the new site? Within the first couple of hours, my paying subscribers were emailing me, telling me how much better the site was. I was really surprised. I was expecting more people to be angry that I was foisting change on them and why couldn't I make it work, and that was really not what happened. It really was more of a case of the site is so much better. And then I started seeing new people started signing up for the site and buying subscriptions. And we initially had a 34% bump in paying subscribers when we moved to our new subscription. I even wrote a case study with beehiiv because this had gone so well. And so I had a great experience with the product, and honestly, it was a little emotional. You got to the end of 6 days, you're completely exhausted. You're trying to make sure that this thing actually functions, and it did, and it functioned really well. I had a site that was actually mobile responsive, not just according to the marketing, but it really was actually pretty decent that people could actually use. And it just was so much better in terms of the overall experience. Was everything perfect? No. I had to have separate processes for how I managed my print subscribers, names, addresses, etc. Different conversation. We'll talk about that another time in another episode. But in terms of moving from that old infrastructure to the new infrastructure, I went from about 25 different tools down to about 7, with beehiiv replacing a tremendous number of tools for me. It's just a different process. Going through and editing newsletters used to take me a full day. Now it takes me a few hours to prepare them. So there were very real productivity benefits, and that's why I tell you it's kind of my ride or die. I need it to work. And it does work, and it works really well. I also don't pretend the platform's perfect. No platform is, right? They all have pros and cons. But it is something that worked really well for me. And in the future, as I have time, I'll keep releasing some additional episodes where I start to talk about some of the different features and what are we actually using. So this will continue to be my series. Where I think it's helpful, I'll try and include links to some of the help articles where I think you can find a few of these features if I think you'll find them helpful. But yeah, that's really it. If you like this, like, subscribe, comment if there's something you want me to talk about in the future. And if it's something I use, I'll do my best to talk about it. Again, this is a screenshot-free zone. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm not sharing the internal workings of my business. I'll simply talk about what governed those decisions. So if you have stuck around this far, wow, good on you. This is a long story of how we did this WordPress migration in 6 days. It's kind of a crazy story. We lived to tell the tale, and we're in a better place. Until next time.